Scholars of United States history, welcome to one set of two video notes for Unit 2. We've got a lot to get through. If I go too fast, just pause me. A great companion will be your class notes. Let's get rockin' and rollin' with Chapter 5, Section 1, American Nationalism. Well, one first way to protect this United States of America would be a tariff. Now, keyword I said was protect. These tariffs were called protective tariffs. The theory here, look at this piece of cloth right here. This nice bed sheet was made in America. It costs $4. This British one was made in Great Britain. It costs $4. Now, sometimes the British one would even be cheaper than the American one. We, the United States, does not want people to buy British stuff. So how do you make the British stuff more expensive? Well, put a tariff on it. A tariff is a tax that increases the cost of imported goods. Now that $4 British cloth costs $5. So everyone is going to love the American-made tariff. Awesome. Now it was called a protective tariff because it was designed to protect American goods. But where in the United States are goods made? Mr. Spicer, the North? Yes, you're right. In the North. So the North loves protective tariffs. The South does not love protective tariffs because the South is agricultural. These tariffs will be a big deal. All right, there's one big deal. How about some court cases? Court cases will be decided by this guy right here. This is John Marshall, who was the Supreme Court Justice for a really long time. We remember him from Marbury versus Madison, which established judicial review. That would be the power of the courts to declare a law unconstitutional. He comes up with two more cases. The first one's McCulloch v. Maryland. McCulloch v. Maryland, Bank of the United States. One branch of it was inside the state of Maryland. Maryland did not like having the Bank of the United States, so they tried to tax it. They placed a tax on the bank. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was McCulloch versus Maryland. And in that case, John Marshall said, no, states cannot interfere with the legitimate business of the national government. This is a national government smackdown on the bank. Why is the bank okay? Well, John Marshall says it's not expressed powers because in the Constitution they never expressed to have a bank. It is implied powers. McCulloch versus Maryland is an implied power case, which gives the national government strength over the state government by saying, hey, state, you can't do this. This case is about levels of government. The Supreme Court will decide levels of government. I have a premium way for us to remember this. The M stands for money, think bank. I've got a little c and an uppercase C, levels of government. Lowercase c would be for the states, uppercase C for the national government, which did be victorious in McCulloch v. Maryland. What about Gibbons versus Ogden? G-I-B-B. There's more B's than anything else. Boats, business, business, boats. Gibbons versus Ogden is the steamboat case. In the state of New York, a steamboat company wanted to have a steamboat monopoly. New York wanted to force the steamboat monopoly on other states. Goes to the Supreme Court, and the question is, who gets to decide interstate commerce? Commerce is a fancy word for business. John Marshall says the national government controls interstate commerce, not the state government. This case is once again, just like McCulloch, important because it's going to affirm the power of the national government over the state government. It also sets the precedent that the Supreme Court can decide cases between competing business interests. That's McCulloch. That's Gibbons. You got a premium court case card, I'm sure, to get yourself ready for this test. Adams-Onis Treaty. Let's totally shift gears and talk Florida. Florida was originally controlled by the Native Americans. Then Spanish take over Florida. And then the Spanish will sign Florida over to the United States in the Adams-Onis Treaty. Andrew Jackson kind of forced this to happen by being very aggressive in North Florida. But the key is that the Adams United States, John Quincy Adams, and Onis, ambassador from Spain, give Florida to the United States in the Adams-Onis Treaty. All right, talking about Monroe Doctrine, talking about how the United States interacted with Europe. Important thing, the Monroe Doctrine states that the Americas should be kept separate from Europe. And here's what I mean. Uncle Sam, the United States will defend all the Americas. I'm talking about North America, Central America, South America, from Europe. So Europe can't come sneaking over the ocean to try to take more land. If they do, America is going to protect all the Americas. But what if Europe has a colony and there's an independence movement and Europe gets kicked out of that colony and then tries to take the colony back over? Oh, yeah, Uncle Sam will use that bat again. Now, will the United States interfere in European affairs? No. It says U.S. will not interfere in European affairs, but Europe, America, is for the Americas. Don't come over here to try to take over more land. You see, according to the Monroe Doctrine, there's a difference. In the Americas, the governments are republics. That means that the people elect representatives. Whereas in Europe, they are monarchies, king and queen. Different. All these ideas will be part of James Monroe's belief. That's what they're called, the Monroe Doctrine. All right, a little bit about industry. First of all, though, let's talk about roads. We've got canals, we've got railroads. I don't have a picture of railroads. Just believe me, we've got railroads. Roads, canals, railroads are all designed to help Americans move to the west. It's all about going west. The Erie Canal connects the Atlantic Ocean because the Erie Canal connects with New York City, Atlantic Ocean, all the way to the Great Lakes, to Lake Erie. Erie Canal connects the Atlantic Ocean to the west. The roads, canals, and railroads all help people go west. They also lead to an industrial economy, okay? All right, what about down south? Down south, you guys know this from world history, that Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. The cotton gin used interchangeable parts. It was mass-produced. That means it was easy to fix. That means it was cheap. And it was a big deal, because as you crank that cotton gin, all the seeds from cotton get taken out, and you get left with pure cotton. If there's a lesson from the cotton gin, it's this: it leads to an increase in slavery. But why? It should make all the work easier. No. You see, the cotton gin makes more money. If you have it, you can make so much money growing cotton. So you need more land. You need more people to plant the cotton, to work the fields, to pick the cotton, to work the cotton gin. So the cotton gin actually leads to an increase in slavery. Speaking of slavery, as you know, slavery was absolutely horrific and brutal and terrible. And it was increasing in the South because of the cotton gin. So much so that slaves thought about revolts. Gabriel Prosser thought about it. He came up with a plan in Virginia for a great slave revolt, but Southern society found out about it before he could do it. As a result, he was killed, and many of his conspirators were killed. Gabriel Prosser thought about it. Nat Turner did it. In Southampton, Virginia, Nat Turner and his followers kill over 50 white men, women, and children, not with guns, but with knives, in Nat Turner's slave rebellion. Now, Nat Turner will be caught and killed, and his men will be killed. But there were three results of Nat Turner's slave rebellion. Result one: people were afraid. It fed fear in the South. Two, and probably most importantly, it led to harsh fugitive slave laws. So for runaway slaves, the laws got more harsh for what slave owners could do to those runaway slaves, because this is where white Southern society wanted to crack down on slavery when it looked like it was getting out of control. And three, silenced Southern abolitionists. Some Southerners were against slavery. Laws were passed saying, you're not even allowed to talk about it. Growing sectionalism. Two sections of the United States, North and South, start fighting. They start fighting over the issue of slavery, over the spread of slavery. At first, there was 11 free states and 11 slave states. The balance was perfect. But then Missouri wanted to join the United States. Say, hey, look right here. Here's Missouri. Wants to join the United States as a slave state. That would make 12 slave, 11 free. That's a horrible balance, so says the United States of America. So they carve a new state out right up here, the state of Maine. They make Maine free. They make Missouri slave. That fixes the balance. Now it's 12-12. But then they also draw a line. This line right here is the Missouri Compromise line, or the 3630 line. It's a line of latitude. It cuts the United States right in half. If you are below the line, you are slave. Excuse me, South is slave. Excuse me. If you are above the line, you are free. Except for Missouri, which is a slave state, even though it's above the line. Weird, I know. These compromises are strange. This compromise will fail because there's only one way to get rid of slavery, and that's to get rid of it, not to compromise over it. A little bit about Andrew Jackson. Gosh, he was a popular guy. He was an influential guy. He served 2 terms as president of the United States of America. Remember, Battle of New Orleans, the hero, the new national hero. He helped Adams-Onis Treaty get done by forcing the issue in North Florida. When he is president, he did 5 big things. Let's look at it. First of all, he got elected by the common man. Who is the common man? The common man would be a white male adult who doesn't own land. It used to be you had to own land to get the right to vote. The election of 1828, which is the election where Andrew Jackson wins, changes that. Property restrictions were eliminated, and these common men, well, they supported Andrew Jackson because they said, Action Jackson, he's one of us. We like old Hickory. Here's another one, spoils system. Andrew Jackson becomes president of the United States. One of the first things he does is fires a ton of federal employees. That would be the people that have jobs in the federal government. He says, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. And then he looks at his supporters and he says, you're hired, you're hired, you're hired, you're hired, you're hired. That's the spoils system. Reward your supporters with jobs. Andrew Jackson says it's more democratic that way because they voted for me. I won. The most amount of people that like me are my people. So I'll give them jobs in the government. I will let them work for the government they voted for. The famous phrase, to the victor go the spoils, comes from the spoils system. How about the nullification crisis? This is all about tariffs. I remember saying that the South hates tariffs and the North loves tariffs. So then down south, like a state, I don't know, South Carolina probably hated tariffs so much. A tariff came along in 1832 called the Tariff of 1832, and when it did, South Carolina attempted to nullify it. To nullify means to cross out, to declare null and void. To nullify, snap it. As in, we're going to ignore it. We won't pay it. We're not going to do the tariff. We hate the tariff of 1832. We're not going to do it. Andrew Jackson says, well, I'm not going to deal with that. I will send in federal troops, and he threatens to use federal troops to march into South Carolina to make South Carolina pay the tariff. Because think about it. If South Carolina can just nullify a law, they can nullify anything. And if every state can nullify everything, then the whole United States of America will dissolve. My man right here, President, Vice President, Andrew Jackson, John C. Calhoun. Calhoun with a neck beard supported the nullification crisis. So as a result, Andrew Jackson wanted to kill him. Trail of Tears. Trail of Tears starts to happen during Andrew Jackson's presidency. It deals with the Cherokee. The Cherokee Indians were located in Georgia. They held on to their land. Andrew Jackson wanted to give the common man more land. So he supported the Indian Removal Act, which removed Native Americans from Georgia to Oklahoma. Then it was called Indian Territory. It was controversial. The Supreme Court said you're not allowed to do it. Andrew Jackson ignored the Supreme Court, and the Cherokee were forcefully removed from Georgia to Oklahoma. More than 4,000 Cherokee die on the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson, last big thing, goes after the Bank of the United States. Andrew Jackson represents the poor common man. The Bank of the United States is for the elite northerner. He vetoes the bank, destroys the bank goes away, and Andrew Jackson celebrates it as a victory, the common man over the rich northerner. What's the legacy of Andrew Jackson? He personified democracy. 1, he challenged the economic elite, that's bank war. And 2, he rewarded his supporters with jobs, with J-O-B-S, and that is the spoils system. Andrew Jackson, if there was democracy, that is what democracy looks like.